I'm not wanting my clients to live in a museum of things that I've created. I want them to feel like it's their home. So that's why I feel like it's super important for myself and other designers to check the ego and make sure that their client is first and foremost, but to help them push the boundaries. You can see a timid client and you understand if they're like, well, I don't know, I've never done that color, or I've never done that sheen before, I'm a little nervous, and showing them why that might work and easing their fears and providing them comfort moving forward. And it really does yield a good result.
Welcome to episode 136 of the AFT Construction Podcast, and our guest today is Holly Wright of Holly Wright Design. Now, Holly is based here locally, and for those of you that have been to our corporate office for AFT Construction, she was the lead designer that designed our office suite, and this is going on 11 years ago, and it's super current. She had great foresight on that design, and now that she's on her own, we spoke in depth about marketing, business, hiring, that challenge of bringing on employees, how her company has grown, how it's evolved, even the fear of being an entrepreneur. And then the challenges that come with it with client communication, design, setting ego aside. You know, what's that ideal client? There's a lot of great content. So without further ado, let's get started. So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast. And here in studio, we have Holly Wright. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you. So Holly is the owner-founder of Holly Wright Design, which I believe we were already talking about. It's already been 5 years, which is hard to believe that you've been on your own 5.
Went by really quick. Very, very quick.
And you're as busy as ever. I mean, because you have so many projects. We have a few together and you're just killing it out there. It's amazing.
It's been wild. I didn't even think I was going to last a year. And here I am surviving.
Is that funny? I want to get into that entrepreneurship story. But what's funny is we were talking off air as you came in, because we have a lot of mutual connections. We've known each other for like 10 years now working in town. And what I found is in construction is such an odd industry in the sense that, you know, we're super competitive here in town. You know, a lot of us, the design world, I'd imagine the same. And I found that, you know, I've had a good mentor, and I've talked about like Rod Collins here local, and he's been a great mentor to me. Super open, transparent, doesn't look at me as a competitor. And it really goes back to that mentality of abundance as opposed to a mentality of scarcity, right? There's just some people have that. And I've noticed, you know, I'm part of a Builder 20, part of like CBUSA, these other programs where I get to meet builders around the country. So it really has helped us really refine the process. But for you, Holly, I mean, is it similar? How collaborative is the design world here, just locally?
You know, here compared to other markets that I've heard of, we're super collaborative, which I'm so grateful for. I have a team of designers that we've known each other for 15 plus years, and we lean on each other for just feedback on different trades in town, even giving out client referrals. Hey, I'm too busy right now. Do you guys have availability? He seems cool. This is what he's got going on. Might want to check him out. And I'm just grateful that we can share that information with each other and talk about celebrate each other's wins and talk about the falls and things like that and everything in between. And we're pretty open book when it comes to talking about details like that, which has been great.
Because I know it's hard, you know, as you mentioned, the whole goal, especially going on in your own, Holly, you're trying to figure out lead generation, right? You're trying to get leads. You're trying to figure out, okay, where's the next project? You and I have been through the recession. We know how this goes.
Yes.
And so constantly in the back of your mind, you're like, I always need enough. But there comes a point where you do have a lot of work. You have a pipeline. You're busy. And so the leads are still coming. And you don't want to just say, you know, I'm too busy for you, or I don't have time for your project because it doesn't fit my scope. And it's really hard. Whereas if you have a network of people to refer that out to, where it's a little bit less of an impact, where they're maybe like, oh, Holly's too good for me, right?
Right. And I never want to portray that ever, because in all honesty, I'm kind of a sucker. Like, I want to be there for everyone. Like, I want to take the small jobs. I want to take the big ones. So for me to say no is really, really difficult. So I want to help people. If I know that I can pass them on to a colleague of mine that will give them great service, I'm more than willing to do that. And that way I still have a good name. I didn't turn them away. I wasn't too good. Sometimes our timelines just don't work, or aesthetically, maybe it's just not the right match, but I'll always refer out. And I've gotten referrals from other designers too that said that the project that they were presented with, it's not really their aesthetic, or they don't have the capacity to handle a project of that size right now. So, hey, you take a stab at it. And it's worked out really great. Just kind of what goes around comes around in a good way.
And I'd imagine even outside the leads, I mean, probably similar for you, there's, it's not really a marriage, but there's a huge relationship there between you, the architect, the builder, some of the trade partners possibly. I know the client especially, because you're with the client the whole time.
Right.
You know, so I would imagine there's some importance, especially, you know, the experience you've had with different contractors or architects, and say, that's a great one, or maybe I don't want to do that one again.
Yeah. I I work really well with a lot of trades in town, and I keep my relationships going with everyone. It's just nice to play well in the box with everyone and be able to work nicely with the client. Even if you don't see it eye to eye all the time, it's okay to know that there's a difference of opinion or a different way of working together. And I can usually work pretty well with anyone, and I don't want to discriminate working with anyone, but there's certain people I prefer to work with over over others. And that's just because we just have a better kind of communication style and just the way we work together is just a little bit more seamless.
So how open, going back to the design side and the collaboration, one thing for you going out on your own, and we could get into your story here in a second, but when you go out on your own, there's a lot of trial and error, right? Trying to understand, okay, well, how much do I charge, right? And part of that's a little complicated because there's a value that you bring, but at the same time, there's a work experience and there's a timeline. And so you kind of have to walk before you run, right? As you start understanding that. And, so how has that been just collaborating to understand, well, where should I be financially? What should I be charging? What's the value I bring to the client? Am I worth what I'm charging?
Right. And that has been trial and error. I kind of had an idea in my mind when I went off on my own where I felt comfortable that I can give my clients a fair price, but also be fair to myself. And knowing that I give them a lot of experience, I give them a lot of collaboration with me and a good working relationship. And that does bring a lot to the table. The fact that I can work well with other people in our industry and not make for a complicated project, there's value in that. So I had an idea in my mind to start off with. And as I've gotten more business, I've been able to generate more income with higher pricing. And that kind of matches the value that I'm able to bring to the table because now I have a bigger team. Now we have more people that can work on your project, which makes your project go along quicker, more efficient. So that does bring value. So I'm able to justify different pricing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll just speak to from my experience of working with you. I mean, one thing is like you're super detailed, Holly. Like your design book is second to none. Like it's the amount of detail in there. And I tell clients because for me on this side, occasionally I get the pushback where a client's like, well, I know what I want. I don't need a designer, right? And I'm like, well, I already know if I have someone such as Holly as my designer in the project, I already know how seamless this can go for me.
Right.
As opposed to not having that, the pain it's going to cost me. And so my price has to increase because now I'm having to manage the details and there's so much that goes into it, into your job that most people don't realize.
And even with that, those specification manuals, I have built on that even since when you and I first started together. There's different things I add to manuals all the time to make it more efficient, which is giving you more information. It's leaving less holes in the whole design process so that there's no gray area. There's nothing going back to the client 4 months later saying, sorry, we didn't have that bid in, and it's not an issue for you. It's not an issue for the client. It's not an issue for me. So I've added more to the manual, which essentially does bring more value too, and also kind of increases my price point because I'm able to bring more value to the table and make for a more seamless project overall.
Well, it's funny. I was just having this conversation actually last night with some former clients, and we were discussing, after they had gone through their experience building, right? And what I mentioned to them, I said, when you're out there vetting a team, right, and you're trying to understand the costs and price that go into this, it's really easy if you're just looking at, the sticker price.
Right.
Okay, well, this architect is $10 a foot, and this one's $20 a foot for easy math. Well, without understanding what the difference in information you're getting, right? I said, yeah, he may be $10 more square foot, but you're getting, the BIM modeling and you're getting 3D renderings and Solstice to understand where the shade, is coming in at different times of the year and overhangs. And then you're walking through simulated in the house. And then also instead of maybe, 10 sheets, you're getting 100 sheets, right? And at the end of the day, when you talk about plan busts or overages or mistakes or mishaps, I mean, yeah, on a 5,000 square foot house, it might be 50 grand more, but you're going to burn that up so fast.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And same thing for design, like the amount of detail and information. I mean, yeah, there's a cost to it, but there's so much information that really is going to save them in the long run.
And I think in addition to that, I find that the architects or the trade is more invested. Usually at a higher dollar amount, the architect's going to be on the job from start to finish. Some of the architects that are maybe less costly, they're kind of, here's your plan, here's all the construction documents,
you submit for permit yourself and figure it out.
And then they disappear. They're less invested. It's just a job for them as opposed to something they're passionate about. And I think that you can see different architects in our industry, the higher dollar ones, they're invested in the whole project. They want to know exactly what's going on, what I'm doing on the project, what you're doing on the project, and they see everything through the end. But I think that justifies their price point. It's because the client can trust them to carry on that vision that they started with through the end of the process.
So what's interesting, and this is a good example, is that you mentioned this when you get some of your leads and, maybe the aesthetic's not right or not in the right. It's just, it's different than maybe what's going to excite you, right? Or that you feel that you can do an amazing job. And so we had a project together. And in fact, they'd be fine, Nico and Jenny, who are awesome. And Jenny has been on the podcast.
Adore them.
Yeah, they're amazing. And so it's funny because the first time I met with them, and we had become friends on social media for quite a while. And they knew, because they had listened, they knew I wasn't going to do the project unless we had an architect or designer. Yeah. And, they're like, well, Brad, here's the deal. If you bring in a designer, I'm really picky. I know what I want. It's a very unique style. It's not like everything you see, without throwing any other designs on a bus, just a lot of things you see in town. It's very different. And I'm like, well, I think I have something that's just a fit. So I introduced you in right away. She called me within 5 minutes of your first meeting. She's all, you found it, total home run, amazing. So how have you been able to do that? Because as design, it's very sensitive, right? People, there's a lot of emotion involved. There's a lot of personality involved. Yeah. And you're trying to kind of navigate all this together.
Right. During that first meeting with Jenny, I knew when she opened the door, she was skeptical, and she's like,
because she did not want to hire a
designer. I know, exactly.
And she's in the industry, in fairness.
100%.
And so she knows a lot. She's seen it. She does her own speculative stuff. Yeah.
Right. She understands aesthetics. She knows the terminology. She understands it. But to think that somebody can literally read her mind and know what she's anticipating, we just got each other right from the get-go. When she started showing me inspiration images of things that her and Nico were looking at, I've had those images parked in the back of my head for so long, waiting for a client to
pull the trigger.
Yes, to do it. And it's a different style. It's not for everyone. It's this glamorous, modern, which hasn't hit as much of the market, but we're starting to see more of it now. I was like, I got excited, and she saw my excitement with it. And then we just bonded, and it was easy peasy from there on out. I had a first meeting with her and the architect and Nico, and we sat down, reviewed the plans, started talking about concepts, and I think I gained their trust at that point because I was hitting so much on the nose for them that I earned their respect and their trust, and everything I submitted to them, they said, yep, looks good. And it was so easy. And that's part of the bond I like to build with my clients too, is I want them to know that I'm excited about their job. I want them to be excited about their house too, and be excited about a design aesthetic that they have, or images that they're pulled, or even if they had pulled a couple different styles and they're not really quite sure where their aesthetic lies, I can help guide them that way and get them excited. And that helps build the bond and build the trust for us to start the relationship and really build a really amazing project. I liked the diversity with my projects. Even on my website, you'll see that they're all very, very different from each other, which I prefer. That's part of my interview process when I am with my clients, is learning about their house. Is it something that you've seen that's almost cookie cutter nowadays, where it's the same thing over and over and over again? Or is it something that's new, forward thinking, inventive? Because when I feel inspired by that, you're going to see the best results. So those are the kind of clients that I like to bring on board and make sure that we can work together and create a really cool house.
Well, something you said, Holly, about that is early on in the conversations, the education side, you had these images in the back of your mind already, just waiting for the client to pull the trigger. And, so many times when you look at social media, someone may look at Holly Wright and be like, okay, why am I not at that level? I want to be there, right? And it's this mentality through social media and through other things that we want things so fast. And there's a journey there. They don't realize there's years, there's schooling, you've worked with clients all over the world, leading up to starting your own company. And so there's a lot of time and investment you've put into this, so that when that opportunity comes, you're prepared for it.
Right. And it is an immediate gratification community that we live in. Now we want everything right away. We want it now. So when I work with my clients, just educating them about an aesthetic or why it might be functional or how it might be, it takes 2 years to build a house now. So what might be current now is going to change then. So I try to be more forward thinking based on the experience and education that I have to bring that to the table for them, talking about things that I've seen that have been issues for my clients, things that they've enjoyed, and bring that to the table for them so that they can make an educated decision. I'm not trying to decide anything for my clients. I have a direction in mind that I think will yield a good result, but I want to educate them on why I'm going that way so they don't feel like they got hosed and just went with a decision because they felt that that was the only option that they had. I want them to know that they were involved and they got an education to make the right decisions moving forward aesthetically and functionally.
I love that perspective because when you think about ego, right? I mean, it's not really a word that we're trying to portray here, but the fact of the matter is that there are like directions, right? That they may want to go or you want to go. And it's not really, okay, who's right, who's wrong, as you mentioned. Here's my thought process, here's my end goal, and the education side, which is a key component. But setting those expectations and creating that education, well, now there might be some similarities which draw you together. And that's probably, I would imagine, how you've been able to deal with so many different clients and personalities.
Right. I definitely pick up on things too, even things that they don't even realize that they're saying. When I'm with a couple and they're designing their home and they're showing me images that they like and they talk about how they live, I'm picking up on absolutely everything. And so I bring that to the table later on when we're really deep in design discussions, talking about how they're going to use their space or how they're going to live in their space. I do feel that designers kind of get a bad rap, that we're kind of divas and it's my way or the highway. I have a vision, just go with me. I definitely have a vision, but I don't want that to derail the project because I'm so headstrong in the things that I want for the client. I want to show them. I want to show them what I'm thinking and why I'm making those decisions. But I really check my ego out the door. I want my client to be involved. I want them to feel like it's their home and not my home. One of my biggest compliments I ever had was one of my clients was showing their daughter their brand new house for the first time. And their daughter was walking through the house with them and said, the house is all brand new and it's all custom designed, but it still feels like you. And that just made me so, so happy because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not wanting my clients to live in a museum of things that I've created. I want them to feel like it's their home. So that's why I feel like it's super important for myself and other designers to kind of check the ego and make sure that their client is first and foremost, but to help them push the boundaries. You know, you can see a timid client and you understand if they're like, well, I don't know, I've never done that color or I've never done that sheen before. I'm a little nervous, and showing them why that might work and easing their comforts, easing their fears and providing them comfort moving forward. And it really does yield a good result.
I love that. I mean, what a huge compliment that you've like done something that's new, vibrant, and then it still fits them, right? Their personality. So let's talk about the fun word VE, right? Value engineering.
Yes.
So you mentioned this, that, you know, there's value in your process now with the team and you have this dialed in. But as you mentioned, that now it's taken 2 years to build a house or even longer in some cases. And the tough thing for you is you're involved very beginning, right? You're involved early on. And so you're making selections and products could end up maybe not being available or over budget. And it's not any fault to you because you're very knowledgeable in setting those. And I know that from working with you, but there's a lot of things outside your control. And so how do you manage that process? Because this has been a strain on my company too, is the bidding and repricing and reselecting. And I'd imagine that's created some challenge and, you know, for you as well.
Because I think it's you and I, our initial meeting, or any builder, any designer meeting, that initial meeting that covers all the budget numbers that you've allowed for this job is super important, because that allows me to know what overall square footage, price point I need to be out for flooring, what you've allowed for plumbing, what you've allowed for appliances, just so I know if I'm picking Kohler or if I'm picking Waterworks, you know, so I just kind of know what ballpark I'm playing in. So I know what to show the clients from the jump. So that way they don't feel that we've aimed for the stars and we're a lot further down towards the ground about where we're going to be as far as price point and materials. So because
emotionally, sometimes you may show them something, client gets emotionally attached. Right. And all of a sudden the sticker shock, and then now it's hard to kind of put that toothpaste back in.
So I try to show them things that are going to be in their price point. And then obviously by the time we're showing that versus the time that you're actually bidding it, prices are going up. They're going up quarterly right now for products. So prices are for sure going to be going up from the point I show them to the point that you price them. So if we need to value engineer anything out, we can certainly do that at the time, but it's not anything that we're a stranger to, especially in this market, especially with things becoming obsolete now. They're just not even making the product anymore. So there's a lot of shifting gears pretty frequently right now, but it's just almost our new normal. Just
Is
to
it-
roll with the punches right now. So
It is. So what do you feel is the most challenging thing you're dealing with right now, just in context of our current climate?
supply chain issues. We're seeing a lot of issues with appliances and now even plumbing, air conditioning units, garage doors, furniture has been an ongoing issue for almost 2 years now. So it's created an issue, but it's also just helped us reassign how we schedule everything. We've reassigned how we actually plan material specifications, hitting appliances and doors and windows really, really early on. So that way we can place orders where appliances used to kind of fall out midway through the project. Now they're first and foremost. So we can make sure we have the right locations, we're getting the right specifications and getting those orders placed earlier on. So that way our appliances are waiting in a warehouse for us, ready to install, and we don't have holes where appliances should be when your home is done.
Yeah.
So
Or they put an easy bake oven in.
exactly. Yep. We have plenty of Home Depot dishwashers in our homes right now because I don't have the real deal sitting there. But thankfully, I have really great clients that they're okay with just knowing that this is just the world that we live in right now. And if we need to deal with a wait time, or if we need to make a couple adjustments, then we can. So
the furniture thing is interesting to me because the more I've been exposed to that, the more difficult it is, right? For a lot of reasons. You're working with many different vendors, and each of the vendors have many companies they're working with. And it's a lot more complicated than picking a different appliance or picking a different tile, because some of the stuff you're doing is custom made. Mm-hmm. There's handcrafted and sewn and other things. But what makes it tough for you is the lead times have gone from, I would imagine, maybe 12 weeks to 2 years.
Yeah.
And so how are you managing this, where it's one thing where if you're specifying an appliance or a piece of tile, I can order that, I can store it, my subcontractor can, my supplier. So we have different teamwork, the way we work around to store the stuff. But in furniture, you're on your own. You're on an island, essentially. Right. So when you have things you're ordering early and some things may come down later, how are you managing just navigating that?
In general terms, I like to tell my clients before COVID and everything went awry, 6 months was usually a good starting point to start ordering our furniture before your home completes. And now I'm telling clients between 10 months and a year out to start doing furniture orders. Some things come in sooner, some things come in later. But what we're seeing now is that things that are coming in damaged.
Yes.
So
which is happening
broken,
a lot.
It's wrong. Wrong colors are coming in. So we're having to resubmit orders, file claims. It's a lot of work on the back end that we're doing now that we've never seen before. And so that is creating kind of a little hitch in the whole program, because we have to submit claims to get things reordered, resubmitted, resent to us, and hopefully it arrives in good condition the next time around. So we are having to order things earlier, which does actually accrue more warehousing costs for clients here locally, which is something I explained earlier on. I've kind of experimented with different facilities around town, and I think that I've kind of whittled down to some ones that are going to work better for us as far as price points, as far as communication, the way they work. But it's kind of a fine line that we're walking. But at the same time, I'd rather have higher warehousing costs to have your things here waiting for you, rather than not having your bed here when your home is ready to move in, or your sofa when your home is ready to go and move into. So kind of a fine line too, if we can hold off on orders so that we can delay shipping just a little bit, so that we're not having to accrue so many costs. That is an option, but honestly, it's just better to order sooner rather than later, because there's so many unforeseen things that happen in our industry all the time now. So it's just better to eliminate that variable.
Well, I understand the communication side. You're trying to set a proper expectation, and the point you brought up that is really important is that yes, it's one thing to order in advance, but it's another thing for the product to show up correct and undamaged, which is a big problem. And what's really tough with not just furniture manufacturers, but I deal with it too, it's that they want you to receive everything and check it immediately, right? Yeah. And sometimes you could be on another job, you could be somewhere else, and that part's really difficult. And so to have a customer on board that, hey, yeah, we have our furniture package and there's going to be some cost warehousing, but to set that expectation and lay that out so they understand there's cost, but there's value in ordering that early and just having that in-house.
Exactly. And warehousing does matter. There are warehouses that you can just ship your product to, but they don't inspect, they don't receive, they don't document by photos or any logs, and they're a fraction of the cost, but you
get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Half of your furniture may show up damaged, and then you're having to file claims then, and then furniture manufacturers won't accept returns or claims by that time because it's 6 months have gone by. So
see, and that's what most people that aren't as experienced as you, Holly, aren't thinking about, right? That in the commercial world, if you're buying a lot of this furniture, well, first off, they won't ship to residential address, just commercial. Right. And there's a lot of reasons. Like some people think that for whatever reason, I've heard so many different scenarios why they think they do that. But the reality is sometimes these trucks can't get in residential streets, exactly right. neighborhoods. They can't fit down there, or loading docks, loading zones, right? There's a lot of things where a commercial facility has access, wide streets, right?
Right.
Because it's just different. And for that reason, if you have someone that's really documenting this stuff and tagging it and marking it, I would imagine that, yeah, there's a cost to it, but it takes a lot of stress off your shoulders.
Absolutely. I mean, there's issues where we have credenzas that weigh 700 pounds. We need a forklift to actually get it off the truck. There are reasons to do this, and they come in on freight carriers. Yeah. They can't make a turn in a driveway. They can't make a hillside lot delivery. So there's a lot of reasons to do it, but at the same time, a client may not understand to document the boxes that things are coming in. If by chance there's a broken leg on a dining room chair, they're going to ask for photos of the boxes that they actually came in to see if it was a freight damage or if it was shipped that way. They document everything, and they're way more precise about it now because they get so many more claims. There's little to no leeway on it at all.
Yeah, there really isn't much leeway. Even if you wait like one day, you're probably no leeway.
There's just you're done. You own those chairs.
Yeah, you own the chairs.
Yep.
So what, there's so much you're balancing right now. So what made you make the jump? What made you say, okay, I'm ready to go on my own?
It wasn't immediate because I was in the industry for 14 years prior to going out on my own. And I had toyed with the idea. I'd actually gone to school for business management before I switched into interior design.
So what made you switch, I guess, before we get to that?
Oh gosh, I was bored to tears.
Like business.
Oh my gosh, macroeconomics, microeconomics, finite math, calculus. I was
statistics,
dying.
all of it, yeah.
Statistics. I slept through that class. It was horrible.
It's funny because just the sidetrack here, like I love math. Like that's my favorite subject. And I hated statistics. So
horrible.
Just like
I went all the way through. I passed through everything, but it was pure misery.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for me. And I remember needing a break. And I took interior design as an elective. And everything just clicked. I felt just invigorated again. I felt like it was just like new life and things just opened up. It's like the veil just lifted and it just opened my eyes, and I switched industries immediately. So I went to the counselor at my college and kind of talked about if this is the right fit for me. And without me even knowing about it, just the way I was even in my youth, how I used to handle things in my bedroom and how I used to always reorganize my bedroom and furniture and want to switch things out all the time. And I used to I used to take the shoelaces out of my shoes and lay them out on the ground and create floor plans for my dollhouses. And it's like, that was just fun for me. That was part of who I was when I was young. And I didn't realize that I could have made a career out of it at that time. And it wasn't until much later that I was able to see that I can actually do something with this and feel happy and proud to do what I'm doing every single day. So switched my industry and started interning at a local firm, and they took me on as an intern. I was super excited. I started getting on jobs right away, and it was an immersive experience because I learned so much about every single aspect of interior design, about how to do furniture, how to do floor plans, how to work with architects, how to work with builders, and all the personalities that clients can offer. And I learned so much, and I toyed with going off on my own, but I just felt like there was so much to know about the business, and I only felt like I knew a fraction of it. So
even after 14 years?
Even after 14 years, because it's ongoing education all the time. There's just so much to learn about, so much. So my husband and I had actually gone on vacation. We went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, which was the longest trip I'd ever taken. And we got to relax and had a lot of downtime and just cleared our heads a lot. In our very last day, we talked about our experience on the trip and what we could foresee our future looking like from that point on. And we were watching the sunset, and it came over me like a wave. And I just felt all of my fear about starting my own company. It just all completely melted away. And that week I came back, I put in my notice, and I never
just
looked
right
back.
Away.
Yeah. It's just like, it's like a snap of my fingers and my fear just left. And I don't know what caused it. Because I did have a fear, like what if I fail? What if I can't get work? Because I did go through the recession with you, and it was brutal. I saw a lot of careers crumble, and I didn't want that to ever happen to myself or maybe tentative employees or anything like that. But that fear drives you. It keeps you moving.
It really does. That fear does drive you. This episode is brought to you by Pella Windows. When it comes to building homes at AFT, almost every project has Pella Windows. And they've been just an incredible partner of ours. And locally, Sammy and Adam, they are not only amazing business partners behind us, but they are super close friends. And I speak on the podcast all the time about the importance of relationships, right? Relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our suppliers. Because at the end of the day, I'm only as good as those that help our brand and assist us in our projects to take it from the ground up all the way to completion. And if we didn't have partners such as Pella, there's no way we'd be who we are today. Over the years, we've built this amazing relationship. When we call them or email them, they respond. They're quick. Their company culture, their integrity, their honesty, they are always there to do what's right for us and the customer. They can do anything from small replacement projects to large custom homes and even multi-million-dollar commercial projects. And also, when you think about their product line, they can do ultra contemporary, historical preservation, and large traditional projects. So for anyone, any scale, any size, they're the ones to call. They're here local. They have an amazing Instagram. Make sure and give them a follow to see what they're doing. So if you need windows and doors, give Sammy and Adam a call. We stand behind Pella. We love what they do, their culture, their brand, and especially their quality. And if you want to learn more about Pella Windows, check our show notes. We'll have everything tagged there so you can give them a follow and have their contact information to reach out. For those of you that have listened to the podcast, you know how big of a fan we are of Build-A-Trend and that we have used this software for the last 4 years. And many of the guests that we've brought on the podcast are also Build-A-Trend users. And in this day and age, with as busy as all of us are in construction, as complicated as it is with escalation pricing, lead times, tracking, organization, all of us need a good project management software to help simplify and organize our business. And there are a couple features that we love a ton about Build-A-Trend. And one is the owner portal. The other is the daily logs. And these are features that we use daily, right? Half of my clients are out of state. And as an owner, it is so imperative how we communicate with our clients, with our team, with our customers. And through Build-A-Trend, this allows us that quick connection. They can check at any time. We can communicate with them. We're up to date. This has actually helped us win jobs, win projects because of that organization, especially at pre-construction. And Build-A-Trend also offers a ton of service on the back end, training and understanding and workshops, to help us use their software effectively. They also have the podcast, The Building Code. To learn more, head to buildertrend.com/AFT to get a 60-day money-back guarantee on your Build-A-Trend account. That's 60 days to make sure you love this product with no pressure, and I know you will. And so what was the biggest trepidation as far as, going off on your own? I mean, all of us have had that fear. We can relate, but for you, was there a certain aspect of going off on your own that worried you the most?
I think just getting work and having the confidence to know that I can actually bring a project from start to finish on my own without a hitch. I had been doing it for years, but knowing that I didn't have someone behind me to back me, I felt nervous about doing that alone, but it was easier than I thought. And I kind of hit the ground running with it. I'm kind of a sink or swim person. I like to be fully submerged, and even if it's chaos, and come out better on the other side. And that's kind of what happened. I got a lot of jobs right off the bat.
So how was it? How did you go from, that's the biggest challenge, right? As I speak to people that want to be an entrepreneur, start their own company, cash flow, the startup costs to run a business. Unfortunately, you're going to be like a entrepreneur, sole proprietor yourself when you start. I mean, that's grown now, as we could talk about, but still there's costs involved in that. There's, a pipeline you have to create. And so, how did those leads start to come into play?
A lot of builder relationships that I had. I think at the time, I feel like there's been so many designers that just emerged over the past few years. And 5 years ago, I don't feel like there was that many options, or there were just people looking to make a switch. They might have been burned out by a company before, or just needing a new relationship, needing fresh eyes on a project or anything like that. So I felt that was kind of my in to get in with certain builders or with certain clients. So I really relied on a lot of the trade relationships I had made over my 14 years in the industry. When I had been working, I wanted to be on everything, on every project, with every builder, with every architect. I wanted to establish relationships with everyone. And it actually did me a favor because when I left, I had all those relationships, and those kind of fueled me into getting more work and to start establishing relationships with clients, and gave me a good leg to start on.
I love that because there's so much truth there. I mean, as you think about it, it's really difficult as you're starting a company for you to maybe pound the pavement, right? And just find clients. Who knows where to come from? But because you have spent so much time cultivating relationships with other builders, with other architects, that now you're on your own and they're like, hey, we know the talent. You know, Holly, she has this skill set, this personality, it's a great fit. Let's move you on over.
Right.
And a lot of times I'm asked, well, how do you begin those relationships? Like for you, I know that you worked at a company, but what was important? You know, what made that builder good? What made that relationship good with you and the builder through that experience, or you and the architect leading up to that point?
I mean, even just getting to know them and how they work and how clients even respond to them. When those clients were at ease with a builder or an architect, those are the people I wanted to work with, because they provided a trust factor with their clients. They provided ease and knowledge with their clients, so the clients didn't ever feel that they didn't know what was happening. There was open communication, and those are the builders and architects that I wanted to work with the most. And people that are like-minded, like myself, that are not ego-driven, that are really wanting to make a good end result. So if you have the idea, or if the drywaller has the idea, if it's the flooring installer that has the idea, like, we welcome all ideas to the table to make sure that the house turns out the correct way, as opposed to, you know, this is my house, my way. I wanted to work with those people, and I worked with a lot of great builders and architects to start off with. But to be honest, when I started on my own, I drove around Paradise Valley and Scottsdale and just started looking at signage, looking to see who had what in what area, people I didn't know. And I just started making phone calls and establishing relationships, saying, you know, I'm not familiar with your company yet. I'd love to meet with you. And just kind of pounded the pavement that way and started learning more about their companies, the caliber of jobs that they take, the style of jobs that they take, how they manage a job. And that kind of helped me discern who I wanted to work with from that point. So it gave me a broader field of people to choose from and work with.
I love that determination, right? The tenacity you have, right, Holly? I mean, when I put in perspective a builder, as a builder, typically, yes, very similar. You know, I work for a bigger company. I knew you back then. In fact, you designed our office, which just so anyone that's been in my office at AT, Holly designed it.
Yeah.
So she
a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And here's kudos to you. It's still current, right? People come in, they're like, this is amazing. This was 12 years ago.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's wild. It's been that long.
So it's been 12 years since you designed our office. I know. And people come in, they're like, this is amazing. And all the walls, like, there's this amazing wallpaper that is still current. And people are like, oh, this wallpaper is amazing. So anyways, great job there.
Good.
Because people love our office. But, you know, going back to that, when you start off, you know, for us, there's a couple ways to do as a builder, right? You can go out and you could find some investors and build a spec home. You can get your sign up. People start seeing your sign. You have content. You could use that for social media, right? And another thing is that if you built those relationships as a builder, there's a lot of designers and architects that they may have worked with some large scale builders, but they get leads too of like a remodel or, you know, an addition or whatever it may be. And then if you've built those relationships, you can hand off and you start building your business, right? And I'd assume that's similar to you. It's like, you go off on your own, and it's not like, okay, Holly, day one, I'm designing this 18,000 square foot hillside in Silverleaf.
Yeah.
Right? There's sometimes it's not that you can't do that because you've done that, but you're willing to say, I'll take this job, and then put that together, and then that starts to catapult, and you start to build that network, and you start to meet other builders and, you know, other architects, and then before you know it, you're where you're at now.
Yeah, and I mean, I took anything, like a kitchen remodel, like anything to get my bearings and to start off with, to build relationships with clients, but I really do enjoy every aspect of the job. I like a remodel. I like just a furniture job. I like the whole ground up experience too. So I wanted to take on a little bit of everything, but now I'm able to be more selective about the things that we're taking and making sure it's the right fit for us, timeline, aesthetics, personality wise. But yeah, there's a lot of growth that I think we've gotten over the past 5 years.
So is there a difference for you when you're getting involved? Because you've done commercial, you've done residential, you know, you've done remodel, you've done new construction, hospitality, restaurant, everything. What's the difference between all of them for you as a designer? Is there one that's more challenging than another?
I like commercial and residential both for different reasons. I feel like with commercial, you have a little bit more flexibility to kind of the sky's the limit. You can be a little bit more bold. You can be more daring because there's not emotional investment in the project. It's not where you're going to raise your kids. It's not how you're going to use your space every day. It's an experience that you're offering people, and and like the owner will tend to be less emotionally invested. It's more about timeline, finances, hitting budget numbers,
yep.
making it a wow, and then that's a done deal. So things tend to go a little bit quicker that way. With homes, it's so amazing to see a homeowner walk through their home after completion for the first time. It's like no other. It's so much joy that it brings me. And I don't want to ever omit that because you don't really get that same warm and fuzzy feeling with a commercial job because at that point it's just business.
Yeah.
It's
we just got to get open.
Yeah. Like let's hurry up and open the doors. But with a home, like seeing and building those relationships with the client, learning about their family, celebrating their wedding anniversary, hearing about all these milestones in their life and building their homes together. It's a really beautiful experience. And to create something that they didn't even know was possible and just to kind of open doors and push boundaries with them, like that's a really, really cool experience. And every homeowner is so different. So it allows for me to explore different kind of areas of creativity for me. And it really expose the client to things that they didn't know were possible.
Does it change your design fee without specifying what that is? Does it change your design fee depending on the scope of work and timeline that's attributed to it?
Yep. So if it's a faster paced timeline, that will generally be a higher cost. But even if it's a more complicated home versus more minimalist, if it's just a mostly glass and drywall home, it tends to have a little bit less detail on my end. More homes that are maybe trying to get a feeling like a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton where every wall has a finish, everything has a detail. It requires a lot more detail.
A lot of millwork.
A lot more flooring plans, lighting plans. It requires a lot of elevation details and profiles, and that will essentially require a lot more time and work, so that'll come at a higher dollar cost as well.
So how are you tracking that? I mean, I would imagine, you may not have like a formal database, but at least you have a pulse out there to understand when you're looking at a project, if it has 13 bathrooms that are super ornate,
right?
You know how long it takes to do a bathroom, right? And all the elements go into it. And, I always tell clients from my side, when they talk about, well, Brad, a budget thing, so we're looking at a house and I tell them, well, the low hanging fruit's the bathroom. That's your most expensive square foot, right? Because you have cabinetry and countertops and tile and waterproofing and all these things, glass, everything. All in one little space, whereas a loft, or like a playroom, just carpet or
drywall
wood
and
flooring or whatever.
Yeah,
it's not much. And so as we look at this, maybe do a Jack and Jill, or, there's certain things I'll consult them that like, here's where the expense is with the base, if you're doing a basement, and here's where you can save. And for you, it's a little bit different because it's not so much, you're involved in the budget as we mentioned, but from your time, there's a big commitment if you're doing a lot of millwork in that. So how are you tracking? Are you trying to get a feel for the client? Because at some points, I'd imagine coming and say, okay, Holly, what's your square foot price?
Yeah.
Or what's your hourly price? And you may not know all the specifics of it at this point.
Right. Because I know that that's why that also kind of ties into my questionnaire and how I interview my clients too. I have kind of a two-step process with how I interview clients. And the first couple of questions I ask is, who's your builder? Who's your architect? What's your design aesthetic? Have you considered budgets? Just to know, generally speaking, where they're at. Have they worked with a designer before? Have they had multiple homes? Is this their first home? Have they had 8 designers before and can them all? Red flag. Just to know essentially how they work. But that also helps me to understand the caliber of the home. If it sounds like it's the right fit for me at that point, I go on to my second point of my questionnaire where we start reviewing floor plans, reviewing any renderings or elevations that have been produced already, or even just conceptual ideas to know if they're looking at all glass houses, are they looking to details that have a lot of ceiling details or lighting elements, just to help me understand how extreme this house is going to go. That helps me gauge my price a lot. So I usually give my clients a range of a price per square foot that I'll be at, and then letting them know approximately based on that information where they're going to be at. But obviously, we'll kind of button up those numbers when we know further from the architect. Yeah,
it's really smart because you don't want to mislead them as far as what the cost will be, especially as the project gets more complex, right? And have to go back. And I've seen that a lot, that with architects and designers from the professional consultant side here in town, that a lot of it's square foot. It does vary by market. Some are hourly, some are square foot. Is there a strategy why it's more advantageous to do a square foot as opposed to hourly?
I think a per square foot allows myself and the client to budget accordingly. If they don't know what my end number is going to be, they don't know if it's going to cost them 5,000 or 50,000 to work with me. So it just helps them to plan budget accordingly. That way they can budget for furniture, they know how to budget for lighting, and they can get an all-in dollar amount based on what you've provided, the architect and myself, and know approximately a good number where they're going to be at. I can actually help them budget for their furniture based off of their square footage, based off of their aesthetic, and kind of give them a roundabout number for furniture too.
Well, it's good because, I mean, if I interrupt here, is that as you look at this, that I've had 2 experiences working with a designer who I won't name, different designers that did hourly. And the feedback from the client is really tough. And I feel for the designer actually is, I know enough from working with you and other designers that how much work goes into design a home. Yeah. And there's a lot, right? There's, when you go to pick a paint color, for example, it's not as easy as saying, here's the paint color because there's 60 shades of white.
Right,
so
right,
it's like, and how does that look with the furniture and this? I mean, so it's not like I'm just going to, a big box store and I'm just picking the chip and here we go.
Right.
There's a lot but whereas hourly, they're spelling out, well, I was, spent an hour and a half for paint. And then the client's like, livid. I can't believe, why am I spending an hour and a half for paint? Right. And then the other experience was, well, when I call my designer, I feel like it's when I'm calling my attorney or my lawyer. That
I've heard that before too.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what it's going to be. And then if they even think about it for a couple hours, am I going to get billed? And so there's this anxiety. Whereas, set price, you would have to protect yourself, I'm sure, with expectations that they're not changing the house 18 times. But at least it creates a common working ground where you're still transparent, but you don't have to disclose every little element of it because there is a lot to your job.
And I feel like with hourly, it gives a client a point to argue it. If you have a flat fee, you've already agreed to terms. If you have to justify why it took you an hour and a half to revise a kitchen layout or anything like that, it's just they don't understand the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes. And I don't want to have that discussion to have to justify why we're charging things the way that we are. But to be honest, we're working with a client for 2 years in some cases. If they're getting billed every single month for 2 years, even with going back to where the warehousing fees come in for furniture, I can't tell you how many times I get the call or get the email, hey, are we done with the warehousing fees soon? Yeah. And that's only after 6 months. They're over it.
Yeah.
So
they're done.
Yeah, I don't want to do that with my fees where they almost feel annoyed to pay it because they've been paying it for so many years. It's like making a car payment. It's like you just don't want to do it anymore.
Especially when it's unknown. You don't know when it's going to stop and it fluctuates so much.
So that's also why I have my rates at a fair fee for me. So in the event that there's a change, and I do amendments to my contracts too, in the event that the scope of work has changed, if the client just suddenly changes their mind and they just choose to relay out the whole house and it requires all elevation changes, those are billable hours. And that kind of detail I do hourly just because it's minor, but a whole house, it helps everybody budget, and it just kind of builds a trust between the two of us, the fact that I'm not going to take advantage and I'm not overly billing or anything like that either.
So as far as, the ideal client, you mentioned this a little bit, you have your questionnaires that kind of help decipher, right? Just who you're working with essentially. Are there, is there opposition from your side when you ask, hey, have you worked with the designer before? If they said no, I know we get the experience of ours that they haven't, and it was like phenomenal. I mean, are there certain boxes, windows that you're trying to understand where the leads are coming in and try to keep them there overall?
Yeah, when I interview my clients and I ask them if they've worked with another designer before, it's more so not just so I can weed them out, but it's just to know if they've had a good experience, if they've had a bad experience. But it also helps me to understand how that client works. Or she wouldn't answer my phone calls at 9:00 at night, or she wouldn't return a drawing to me on a Saturday. I know that they're all day, all night, by all means, and that's not my client.
Yeah.
So, it just helps me to understand their personalities. Some clients, they're okay with knowing that we have normal working hours like everyone else does, and we have to have family time, we have weekends, we have downtime. But it just helps me to understand their personalities, and if it's going to be a lot of work, it's going to be a good fit. If it's going to I don't want to mislead a client and make them think that I can operate at the way that they're used to operating if that's not how our business operates. So doing that interview process and knowing how they've worked with designers before and how they foresee our relationship moving forward is something that's really important. In some cases, I can just educate them and let them know this is how it generally work. Is that something that'll work for you? Or is that how you foresee this going forward? Some cases it's not. So that's a good point to, this won't work, and we can start to navigate. And that's where I forward them another designer's name. That has happened before, where I knew of a friend of mine that would have been a better fit for a client given her personality, and it totally worked for both cases.
Yeah, it's so mature though to be able to identify that and be able to step away and say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the example you gave where, I'm calling, my designer at 9:00 at night, or send an email Saturday night, get a response. It reminds me, I sat in a seminar once, and there's a gentleman, he was speaking about estimating as a contractor seminar, and he said, for him, and he's retired now, but he was saying when he would show up to a house, he'd pick up the doormat and look at a doormat, and if it was like perfectly clean, he's like, there's 10 grand. And then he'd go into the house and he'd sit down next to him. And if they brought him a drink and they brought a couple, like a coaster, there's 10 grand, like just funny things, like just little things to pick up. Okay. How vigilant are they going to be in the process? And the example he gave, he said, look, because before being experienced, I did a house for someone, and we're doing drywall, which you understand, they're hanging drywall, they're making cuts. And the client was coming through counting every piece of drywall, like the waste, like, do I get a credit for this and this? And he realized, hey, not only is this a difficult client now I'm navigating, but it's also an education that I could do a little bit better of understanding, who the clientele and how to set these expectations. Because with drywall, with tile, there's waste, and I need to communicate that. And because some people get it, some don't, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very similar to you, is that we really have to understand, because it's a very emotional process for our clients, and it's a lot of money they're investing in this. And there's and you alluded to this on the residential side. And so we do have to be cautious to make sure, hey, I've made plenty of mistakes, so I'm not going to make that again. So I'm going to make sure I set the tone next time. Right.
And I think that's just kind of trial and error. The reason why I have that interview process to start with, I didn't have that when I started on my own.
You're just like, I'll take the job. Let's go.
Yeah. But then like 2 years in, and I have a client that
is driving you nuts
like on the email, and I'm like, I should have interviewed thoroughly. But that's why I have those interviews. But it helps both of us, because I remember in school, one of my teachers said, we interview our clients the same way they interview us. We are going to be in a working relationship, contracted for multiple years, making sure that we can actually work together. It needs to be good on both ends, not just one. So it's very important to know that you can actually get along with your client and you guys respect each other in the way you work.
It takes some time. I had some bumps and bruises similar to you, and we had this amazing like trophy home, amazing house. I mean, it was just spectacular, and it was one I really wanted.
Yeah.
And we were in design, pre-construction, as and I'm sitting there, and he's like yelling at his wife on the phone with me and the architect on. I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I ended up not doing the project, which I'm glad. It ended up not going great. And so it's those little things that in the past you would have tried to make something work, instead of saying, no, I've experienced this now. I can identify it now.
Right.
We're gonna find a way out of this.
But there's even to that point, there is so much to be said about your gut instinct. And somebody that does something that's morally not what you would do, like yelling at your wife like that in front of other people. Exactly. That's not part of your character. So can kind of switch gears, like, this isn't a home for me. But there's been so many clients, even ones I have taken before in the past, and my gut was a little off, and I was like, I don't know, I think that this may not be a right fit, but I really wanted to do that house. The architect's really cool. I really want to work with him, and I took it, and I shouldn't have, and there's so much to be said about just trusting your gut. And I feel like that's like 95% of it, is knowing that if you get that immediate connection with a client right off the bat, or if it's kind of a challenge and you kind of have to start working through some things, which I've done that before too, but a lot to be said about trusting your instincts with a client when you're doing an interview process.
I love that you brought that up, because the relationship, the personal side, is so much more important than just the money side, right? And the reason being is that as you look at this, on one side, there may be this opportunity to work in this community or work in this architect or signature project, get your name out there. Mm-hmm. But the emotional toll that it'll take isn't worth the investment.
Right.
Whereas on the flip side, you may have a great client and they want to, maybe you come in less expensive and you're willing to invest in the project. Maybe they're paying you. I look at it for me. I mean, there was a project I want to do in Silverleaf, which
Yeah.
And I hadn't built in there. I mean, I built in there in my last company, but on an AFT. And so I did at a very discounted fee to do it, but it was to get my name in there and the client's great. And it was, and that's one way. So you have to really understand what angle am I taking and is it beneficial? Because going back to your point of have they fired a designer, the worst project I've ever had, the client said, hey, Brad, and they were kind of playing like the poor me. They're like, I fired my architect, I fired my designer, I fired my builder. And I'm just like, okay, I'll do it,
Yeah,
And it was
I'll take
horrible.
it. Yeah.
It was absolutely like, it was like the worst thing I ever did. And, I look back now that, okay, I should have done a little bit more vetting to understand, well, why did you fire him? And then maybe even speak to the ones that fired to find out what it was.
Because there's some instances where they are justified in making their decision. One of my recent interviews, her client, they were hiding a lot of fees from her. And that doesn't build good trust. So that's something like I'm an open book, and I know that you are too. Any bid that you get in, you show it. It's not a problem. Yeah. But that is the only way to work, in my opinion, is to be completely transparent with your clients. So in the event that a client says that, well, I had this designer and she was horrible, and this designer and she was horrible, and it's just there's an undertone happening there, and a red flag starting to go up, and I'm starting to understand that it may not be their 5 previous designers. Yeah. Something else could be wrong.
Yeah, right? Something else could be wrong. But to your point, and we've had the same thing, where even having had that experience, we have a house now that we're just coming up to completion, and they had fired the contractor, we took over for them.
Yeah.
And it's going to turn out amazing, and it's been a great experience. And part of it is, as you mentioned, the contractor was not, very upfront about the fees and costs and stuff. And so you have to understand really what is the pain point of the customer, and then make that educated decision.
Right. Because clients are okay with paying fees. They just want to know about it.
Yeah.
If they feel
if they lay it out. Yeah.
Exactly. If everything's transparent and they agree to it, you agree to it, then there's no harm done.
It's just easy.
If they feel like or even if they find out that there was something that went on behind their backs, you lost their trust from there on out, and it's going to be a brutal end of that project.
Well, you can't build it back. I mean, once that's gone, it's so hard.
Because I've seen relationships like that before in the past, not for me personally, but from other experiences, and it just doesn't end well for anyone, and I just don't want that reputation.
No, not at all. So social media wise, I know in the beginning, like you're starting your company, you're trying to build that now, like that's a big part of what you do. I mean, how involved are you from the social media marketing side, for your company?
Still some growth there. You're amazing at it. I feel like there's like 10 of you, because I don't know how you do so much. But that is something that's one of my goals this year, is to kind of amp that up a little bit and actually get more FaceTime, because I think that it's really important for people who don't know you. They just see words behind a screen on an Instagram. They don't know if you're writing that or if it's a marketing person writing that. It's me personally that posts everything on my Instagram. I'm in charge of posting. I'm in charge of the way we write it, how it comes across to people. I make sure I tag everybody that's in all the images. But I want to start doing more FaceTime, doing more walkthroughs, doing tutorials about why we're doing things the way we are, and having people to get to know us as a team, as opposed to just pictures and script on a screen. So that's my new goal for this year.
I love it. I mean, there's so much value. It's funny. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, because especially for you, someone that's super personable, Holly, right? That you have this design aesthetic. And it's funny because I've seen your page kind of change too. Like, for as long as I know you, that now it's like, and you have these amazing designs and photography. And then, that personality behind it. Like it's fun, because like as you go to meet with someone, they feel like they know you, right? Yeah. And there's already a common ground. And then, as you mentioned, now it's just down to the vetting and making sure does budget work, does timeline work, does my expectations work, and it just makes that process.
Because I think interviewing designers, I think is an intimidating process for a lot of people. If they can see your personality, they see your personality on your stories, and they see that you're likable, you're knowledgeable, you can talk very easily with them, and they already feel at ease, and they don't even know you yet. So that is something that I would like to get to people who I don't know, who don't know me, who don't know anything that I do, that maybe have just moved to Arizona, that don't know any builders. I'd love for them to get to know me like that, versus having to hear my name or hoping that we might have a good meeting together, to get to know my personality, to know that I don't have an arrogance to me, and it's fun. It's lighthearted. This is supposed to be a cool project. Like, look at all the cool things we get to see and do, and let me talk you through it. I want to be able to explain to people before they even get to meet me.
So it's easy. Like, this is your first podcast, and you dialed in. So this is like a slam dunk for you to start doing all this content.
This is amazing. Post.
Yeah. Super easy. So what do you do for fun outside of design?
When I'm not working, I'm traveling. I love to travel. It actually kind of fuels me and gets me to kind of reset a little bit. Even pulling inspiration from everything that we get to see and do, whether it's restaurants we're going to, hikes that we're doing. But to be honest, sitting on a beach or quiet and on a hike, that's where I really reset and rezone, when I'm not being distracted. Because even I do meditation every day, but even that 20 minutes that I give myself every morning, it's still not enough. You still need that reprieve to reset your thinking, to reset your logic. And I think that's why when I came back from Hawaii and that trip, because I was allowed myself to be silent, allowed myself to be still and really connect with my feelings and my emotions, that's why it was so easy for me to make a decision. When I'm able to travel and do that, it helps me reset and make decisions and be effective for my clients and everybody moving forward. So it feels good.
Well, you have to sharpen the saw. And the thing is, like, as you mentioned, is this travel brings you a lot of inspiration.
Yeah.
Right? You can see a lot of creativity and history and things that are timeless that really connect. And as you know, for you, I mean, a lot of our business and in construction and real estate and design, you know, and especially running your own social media, what you're doing, I mean, there's a lot of extrovert activities. And so you have to have, any extrovert needs that introvert time.
Yes.
But they just have like
100%.
And I need that, where I enjoy that, where it's just like quiet, and you know, we have a lot of kids and we have a lot of work.
Yeah.
And stuff. So there are times where I just need like some introvert time for a minute just to recharge that, you know.
Well, it's one chaos to another. You're on the job site or you're with all your children at home. So it's
job
a lot.
site at home. Job site,
all the jobs.
Yeah. There's a lot. So what do you have that's upcoming and exciting?
Well, we are bringing on more employees.
Wow.
So
how many are you at now?
We're at 5 right now. We have another one starting next week, and a summer intern on board, and then probably hiring another one coming up here pretty soon.
Amazing. So you're going to be at 8.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So we're growing. We're moving our office in September.
Wow.
So that's going to be good. We actually outgrew my space a lot faster than I was anticipating. So we got to grow, got to keep moving. But at one time I didn't want to be any bigger than like 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
Like I can't handle anymore.
Yeah.
But like once I like swallowed that, I'm like, give me all the employees, all the space, give me everything. So it's like I just had to swallow the fear of growth, and now I'm hungry. So
I love it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on hollywrightdesign.com or my Instagram at hollywright_design_.
Well, Holly, you've been amazing. And again, for all of you listening, go give her a follow. She does amazing work. All of you have been in my office. That was her design. So she's done incredible stuff. So thanks, Holly.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
So thank you all for tuning into the podcast today. And just as a recap, if you check the show notes, they're just going to have all the links for the topics that we discuss. And also one of our favorite features now is the chapters that go through the conversation. So if there's certain topics you want to revisit or listen to, they're outlined by the time that we discuss those. And again, we can't thank you enough for all of your support. Please make sure and download our podcast, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you download your podcast.